So you want to learn React, huh? Awesome. You are in exactly the right place. Look, React is one of the biggest, most in-demand skills a web developer can have. But I get it. Starting out can feel like a total whirlwind. So think of this explainer as your personal map. We're going to create a clear 30-day plan to get you from zero to totally React ready. But let's be real for a second. The first time you lay eyes on a full React roadmap, it looks, well, it looks like this. It's a lot, right? All these different boxes and lines and technologies. If you're looking at this and your brain is starting to short circuit, just take a deep breath. That is 100% normal. Every single one of us has been right where you are now. But here's the secret nobody tells you at first. You don't climb a mountain in a single jump. You do it one step at a time. So we're going to take that big, scary map, and we're going to break it down into a totally manageable 4-week journey. We're going to cut through all the noise and just focus on what actually matters. So here is our game plan for the next month. We're going to kick things off with the absolute must-know essentials. Then, week by week, we'll build on that, moving through core concepts, the modern tools everyone's using, and finally, we'll get into the advanced stuff that's going to get you ready for a job. This is your personal guide. Let's do this. Okay, first things first. Before we write even one line of React code, we have got to make sure our foundation is rock solid. See, React is a JavaScript library, which means having strong JavaScript skills isn't just a nice-to-have, it is an absolute non-negotiable. All right, think of this as your pre-flight check. You need to be comfortable with these concepts before you even start week 1. You know, modern JS syntax like arrow functions, they're everywhere in React. You're going to need async await for fetching data. And honestly, array methods like .map are the bread and butter of rendering lists. And understanding the DOM without a framework, that's key, because it helps you truly appreciate the problem that React solves. I'm serious, do not skip this step. Okay, week 1, let's dive in. This week is all about building that core foundation. We're not getting distracted with fancy libraries or anything like that. We are focused purely on the heart of React itself, what makes it tick, and how to start thinking in components. So for this week, our mission is to nail these 4 pillars. First up is JSX. Now, it might look like HTML, but it's this special syntax that lets us write our user interface right there inside our JavaScript. Then we have functional components. These are like the reusable Lego bricks of any React app. We'll learn how to pass data into them using props. And finally, we'll meet our very first hook, useState, which is the magic that gives our components memory and brings them to life. Now, this slide right here, this breaks down probably the biggest hurdle for new React developers, understanding props versus state. So here's the simplest way to think about it. Props are passed down into a component from its parent, kind of like arguments to a function. They're read-only. State, on the other hand, is a component's own internal memory. It's managed inside the component, and it's what lets your UI actually change and respond to things. And to make sure all this theory actually sticks, you're going to build something. An interactive to-do list is literally the perfect first project. Why? Because it forces you to use everything we just talked about, creating components for each task, using a form to handle what the user types in, and managing that whole list of to-dos using state. All right, welcome to week 2. You've got the basics down, which is awesome. Now it's time to make our applications truly dynamic. This week is all about mastering React hooks. These are the special functions that really unlock the full power of modern React. So this week, we're going way deeper into the hook system. We're going to use useEffect to handle what we call side effects, things like fetching data from a server. We'll get into useMemo and useCallback, which are kind of like your secret weapons for making your app run super fast. Then we'll tackle more complex situations with useReducer and share data with useContext. And yeah, by the end of the week, you'll even build your very own custom hook. So what in the world are hooks, really? Well, the easiest way to think of them is like little power-ups for your components. Need your component to remember something? Bam, use the useState hook. Need it to go grab some data when it shows up on the screen? That's the useEffect hook. They're just special functions that let you hook into all of React's core features from your simple, clean, functional components. And for your project this week, you're going to build a data dashboard. This is the perfect way to really apply these new skills. You'll use useEffect to fetch data from a real-world API. You'll store that data in state, and then you'll build interactive filters. And this is where you'll get that aha moment when you actually feel the performance boost you get from using a hook like use memo. It keeps your app feeling snappy and responsive. Welcome to week 3. You've officially mastered the core of React itself. That's huge. Now it's time to learn about the incredible tools that the developer community has built around React. This week is about leveling up from being just a React developer to being a modern React developer. This week, we're plugging into the wider world. We'll cover styling with Tailwind CSS, a framework that lets you build amazing designs right inside your markup. We'll learn how to fetch data like a pro using TanStack Query, which seriously simplifies getting data from a server. We'll build apps with multiple pages using React Router. And, this is a big one, we'll learn how to write tests to make sure our code is solid and bug-free. Okay, this is a really important idea to grasp. There's client state and there's server state. Client state is data that lives only in the browser, like is a pop-up menu open or closed. Server state is data that lives somewhere else, on a server, and you have to fetch it, like user profiles or blog posts. Using a dedicated library like TanStack Query for your server state just makes life so much easier by handling all the messy stuff like caching, loading spinners, and error messages for you. Now, to tie all of this together, your project is to build a multi-page blog. This is a fantastic portfolio piece. It's going to require routing to get between pages, data fetching with TanStack Query to load the blog posts, professional styling with Tailwind, and you'll get to prove your work is solid by writing some tests. This is the real deal. And here we are, the final week. You've made it. This is where we close the gap between learning and earning. We're going to cover advanced, production-level concepts and really zero in on the skills you need to land that first job as a React developer. So for our final mission, we're walking that last mile from developer to hired professional. We'll start by looking at frameworks like Next.js that are built on top of React. We'll make our apps way more reliable with things called error boundaries. Then we'll cover the absolutely crucial steps of building and deploying your portfolio. And finally, we'll talk about what to expect when you finally land that first interview. You're going to hear a lot about frameworks. The most important thing to remember is to choose the right tool for the job. Next.js is an absolute powerhouse, a full-stack framework that's perfect for complex web applications. Astro, on the other hand, is amazing for content-heavy sites like blogs or portfolios because it's obsessed with performance and tries to send as little JavaScript as possible to the user. Look, a project that only lives on your laptop isn't really a portfolio piece, is it? Deploying your work so it's live on the internet is a critical skill. And with modern platforms like Vercel, it's actually way easier than you think. You basically connect your GitHub account, click a few buttons, and boom, your project has a real URL that you can share with the world. And just like that, we're at the end of our 30-day plan. Think about it. You've gone from the fundamentals of JavaScript all the way to deploying a modern, multi-page React application. You've built an incredibly solid foundation, and you now have a seriously powerful set of skills. So when you get to that interview, they're going to ask you questions like these. The virtual DOM? Oh, that's just React's super fast copy of the real browser DOM. Prop drilling is just when you pass data down through way too many components. You solve it with things like the context API. And a controlled component is just a form input whose value is controlled by React state. But you know what the most important question will be? Tell me about your projects. Be ready to explain your code, why you made the decisions you did, and what you learned along the way. So there you have it, your structured, week-by-week guide to learning React. You've got the map, you've got the projects, you've got the concepts. The only thing left to do now is to start. So the real question isn't if you can do this, it's what amazing thing are you going to build first?